Hi, welcome to the Dikots once again. And today we are going to talk about convenience versus sustainability. And for that, I am extremely delighted to have one of my colleagues and friends, Dr. Kaushal Joshi. He is a very civil individual. He's also a brilliant civil engineer. He's a father of 2 girls, and he is a very big ally of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've seen him in action. He really means that. But today we are going to poke into his favorite space of civil engineering in the context of convenience versus sustainability. And as you can imagine, we would obviously touch different dimensions from mythology to ancient prehistoric times to historic times to current era. With that, Kaushal, it's a delight to have you in this podcast.
Thank
you for joining us.
Thank you, Shubhrajit. Very, very happy to be here. And as my profession, civil engineering, I'm also very close to civil engineering, not just from my mind as well as from heart. And I would be very happy we discuss that how we evolve as a civil engineer, and in fact, how the word civilization and civil engineers are so much similar. We can discuss about it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Same here. I'm extremely eager to have this conversation, right? And we continue to have these engineering conversations, but today we'll focus on sustainability convenience. You and I have worked on sustainability together. Before I start, I have a few questions and we'll make this interactive. But before I start, I wanted to ask you, when you hear the word sustainability and when you hear the word convenience from an engineer's lens,
right,
what comes to your mind? What do those words mean for you?
I'll start with sustainability. I think the theoretical definition is like it just a balance between economy, bit of a social context, as well as the environment. And if I bring it to my civil engineering, it is always between we are defending our civil engineering stuff against environmental forces. In order to have palatable, it needs to meet the social requirements. And of course, anything in the world, it should be affordable, and hence the economics and those come in. So that's about sustainability. But over the period of time, the balance also tend to tip that all is good, but to have this fast-paced life where the economy and quick thing, and I want to do not for very long term, I don't want to build a fort and castle, I want something quick and fast, then the convenience tend to kick in. And I'm here not advocating old versus new or sustainability versus convenience, but I tend to see that in my civil engineering profession as well, this is a very big dilemma, that we want to build something which is very sustainable or something which is good enough, quick fix, affordable, and meets the basic minimum requirement. And we just go with that one. It's like, fast food versus healthy food or sustainable food. So I'm just using that metaphor, but we are going through that journey in civil engineering as well.
That's excellent. I will come back to that fast-paced thing as you and I have been discussing that topic for a while. But let's get started with the core topic of today. And where I want to start is, as usual, our philosophical space. When you look at dwelling, and I'm starting with dwelling because civil engineering per se means dwelling for most practical purposes.
You are right.
As you think through how we humans have evolved with our dwelling practices, can you tell our audience a little bit of that evolution story, keeping in mind from early days to where we are, and what that means for civil engineering evolution?
Absolutely. Dwelling, in a simple word, is nothing but a shelter, home or a house, In human, even we, before we became a civilized and we built our towns or villages, we were looking for shelters. So if I start very early on, we were looking for caves. It's a shelter, it's a protection against environmental forces, wild animals, lightning, thunder, flooding, fire, whatever you call. So we had those caves. Now caves were almost like available in the nature, in that environment. We had very minimum thing to do to build it. We just might modify it a little bit to make sure that it is a place where I can go and live. So we started with the cave, isn't it? And it is primarily meant for defense. I'm defending it. Eventually, then we also felt, we want to step out a little bit. And then some thought also came that tree houses and people also were there. And we realized that we can also live up to certain level, and on the canopy, and so we are also getting protected and to certain level. Eventually we felt, and when we started settling because of the agricultural practices, or we are now no longer hunter and gatherer, we felt that, look, we have got very limited caves, and then the concept of building started. And I might think like, the builders or the masons would have also started into this community that now we need to build shelters because we don't have ready-made caves available to us.
Not enough,
isn't it? So maybe Shubhraji, I will continue on this, but when you picked up not enough, what is your thought in like the number of people and the number of demand for the dwelling and housing, and how did it evolve? Any thought you felt like hunter-gatherer, few numbers and in a cave, and then now we need a dwelling and we need a settlement and number of people?
Yeah, no, I think it's very similar to where you are with your thinking, right? If you think of how we started defending ourselves, not very different from how an ant or a bird or a tiger does. They find burrows or caves or whatever in nature and they settle in, right? Which we also did. The only thing that happened is over time our brains evolved very differently, right? We moved from limbic brains to prefrontal cortex, and all those things came in, which brought in different neural loops. Which eventually led to what you just said, that we are no longer just hunter-gatherers, but we are now trying to get into agrarian society. What that does is, it helps you with more and more food resources, if not, which means you can feed more people.
Right.
So if you can feed more people, you can reproduce more people. And that possibly, this constant tension between the carrying capacity, the production capacity, and your ability to spread your tribe led to this demand-supply constriction of caves. And that's where we felt the need to build. Coming to build, let me take this back to you. Right? When we use the word build, and if you think of how huts were built or buildings are built, it's additive in nature. So we fundamentally started with additive manufacturing. But we manufacture, possibly in the history of human civilization, we have made most manufacturing post-industrial era. And bulk of that is subtractive manufacturing.
Indeed.
How do you balance these two? How do you see this?
I think it's so wonderful. And in fact, I'll give a brief answer, but I think this is something that we need to look. And from civil engineering, I can give you both examples. But the vast majority is like, accumulating and building. In the sense that we look out for the natural resource like stone or mud or something to fuse together, or bamboo and reeds and some wood. And eventually when we found our love for steel and iron and metals, and in modern time polymers, we started accumulating and building. But there were very few cases where there was a subtractive, like removing. So if I may bring a bit of a localized example from India, we have a World Heritage Site in Ellora and Ajanta. And there are some of the temples or caves, they are built completely on a reverse order. Reverse in the sense that majority of the structures are started from the ground. In fact, below the ground you have foundation, and then you build up, then you have walls, and then you go up. These structures were completely reverse. So the parapet or the top was started first, they chiseled down, and then they eventually came down, and the last bit was the foundation.
The plinth.
Completely reverse. Now that's why I marvel. It's not easy. If you ask our modern engineers to do so, I think we will scratch our head. Oh my God, how will we do it? Even with the modern computing. But there are examples, but very few. But again, I want to toss back the same question. Anything from manufacturing that you can relate, and then we'll again go back on these dwellings and buildings and houses.
No, I think I'll just add to your thinking. Why? There's a different way of asking the same question. Why did we start with additive manufacturing and subtractive happened later? I think human civilization and evolution had to wait till we figured out how to make tools. Till we figured out how to make tools out of stones or copper, then bronze, and then iron and all of that. Because unless you have tools, you can't chisel it away.
True.
But if you think of clay, if you think of sand, if you think of slow setting gypsum.
Yeah.
Well, they are natural, right? And
Yeah.
that's why you can start building your huts and cottages with mud or whatnot.
Yeah.
And that's why we started with additive. The moment we started developing tools, we figured out that we can now go subtractive.
Yeah.
And the moment you go subtractive, it's a victory of human civilization, victory of
Absolutely.
engineering.
Absolutely.
And then we got obsessed with subtractive manufacturing, right?
Indeed.
Which brings us back to our topic today.
Yeah.
Is additive manufacturing more sustainable, or is subtractive manufacturing more sustainable when you think of those ancient times?
I will give you balance of both. And if I may just go on to like our original, dwellings and that conversation, but I'll just start with this, that from caves, when we moved out and we wanted a dwelling, we started kind of a mud house, whatever we had, some stone and muds and put together, because initially it was for defense. Now I have some requirement for storage, and a bit of convenience also started. And that's where, the accumulation started. Or now I need a stone. I need to put something to bind them together. I need a nice shelter on the top, and roofing I needed. And then, so it was all like accumulating, building up, not extracting so far. And that's also linked with the, the tools and whatever we had at that time. So society, like from the caves, now we got into building. And as we have evolution of time, the society more and more, we now started having a bit of a governance, power center. We wanted to have a kind of towns. And somewhere we felt that, wow, now we are having, why can't I build slightly bigger and stronger? Why can't I have it somewhere where I can show off that this is a power center, so tall, big, and that kind of thing came up. And that still continues, Shivrajit, that I still believe that we are building skyscrapers. We are still utilizing this mindset of like building strong, big, dense, to a certain extent to show off as well that we are such a tall and big. So back to this extracting and this, we are still doing extraction mostly for our materials and methods of construction. For example, we know that, we have slow setting gypsum or a lime, but then we thought like, why can't I extract the most useful part out of that limestone and make cement out of it?
Yes.
And then make some fine more additives and make concrete out of it. Now I put some more steel into it and make, extract the relevant part of metal and make reinforced concrete out of it. So we are doing that transition, but in that, I think we are losing a track on the waste that we are generating. And waste of all type.
Correct.
Solid, liquid, gaseous. And that's where I think the balance is slightly tipping off. So I got a balance to you on both sustainability and convenience. Both are happening. We started with building up, accumulating, and now going towards the extracting because of the modern tools and technologies.
Yes. Now, you actually touched on 2-3 very interesting points. So let's stick to this. I wanted to move to roads, which we will come to, but let's stick with this because you touched on 2 very interesting things. First, why don't you share with our audience as a civil engineer the evolution of cement and concrete? I think that was a phenomenal innovation, phenomenal change and revolution, whatever you call it, happened in civil engineering, right? And it's not in modern times. You can go back to Roman times or Greek times.
Absolutely.
Tell our audience about how you see cement and concrete as inventions.
Absolutely. And just to make our things very easy, cement is a very fine gray powder and it has got capacity to bind. And concrete, it's the next product. And if I may use an analogy from our cooking, cement is like a flour and concrete is but a bread. We need some water, oil put together and make a bread out of flour. So cement is just this material. And I think cement is in a way like it's a hero, but he's also getting a kind of a tag of villain because of the emissions and the waste that it generates. But it's such a prosperous powder. It has built the culture, nation, society.
It has built the planet that is today.
Indeed, indeed. And somewhere I heard this statistics that cement or concrete is the second most consumed item by human being.
What is the most consumed item? Do you remember? Water.
Ta-da! So not even the food and not even something else. So cement and concrete is the second most consumed.
Which is why I think that joke is there, that human body is 90% water, and it says it's like a cucumber with stress.
Indeed, indeed. I think cucumber might as well have some stress.
Yes, you never know in modern times. But going back to cement.
True. So cement and concrete.
Yeah.
So concrete, I was told that it is more than 9,000-year-old material. And just like evolution, I give lots of credit to, our Europeans and Romans, and they had it. So it was again an accidental discovery. They realized that if I have got, after the volcanic ashes, and if I have this, and I've got this limestone, and if I grind it and then I make it, I think it gives me something more stronger material.
Yes.
Because remember, we started from cave and we like rocks. Now we realize that can I make a rock by myself? And that's where the concrete came up. So cement is nothing but an extraction of some of lime stuff and a few other additives. But the 9,000-year-old history, we made a kind of a very classical mixture. Get some binding agent like cement, put some broken stones and sand into it, add some water, and now I've got a kind of a paste which will harden to become a very solid substance. Now I can make a rock of any shape and size that I want. And that's the concrete that it evolved. So it started with very basic, get some lime, get some stone,
Yes.
put it, and then we learned about the proportion, the ways of mixing, how much time it will take to harden and set. And then modern chemistry also helped us to find out. And there is an area in United Kingdom called Portland.
Yes.
And Portland some of the scientists over there, they find out, okay, but you know what? Rather than using just the lime like this and grinding it, why can't you extract? I'm going back to your original conversation. So some of the essential component out of it, like calcium oxide, blend it with some alumina and something. And eventually they were mimicking some of the stones or bones that we wanted to have, some calcium combination and try to build it. So eventually cement has got lots of things, and even in modern time there are varieties of cement, but the Portland cement became very popular. And that's why if you see now on a cement bag, they say PPC, Portland Pozzolana cement, or a Portland cement, and that's how it started. And concrete parallelly also learned that, wow, now I've got a magical powder like cement. I can build stronger. I can also build then leaner. And I can also put some more additives. So I'm now getting into details that sometimes we want concrete to very fast setting so that I can quickly build the structure. Let me spike something else into it.
Yes.
I can bring different kind of stone and water.
Which is a fantastic piece of work you and I did and the team did, if you remember. We'll come to that later.
Absolutely.
But this is fantastic. I want to summarize for the audience a very philosophical point you made while you were describing this. Your hypothesis is, which I agree with now that I have listened to you, is that we wanted to build cement or concrete because of our obsession with rocks. We started dwelling there. Our genes and our brains couldn't forget it. And when we realized we are more powerful than the nature, which we still suffer from, a hallucination, we wanted to build rocks ourselves.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
So that's what, I really love that. The second point I wanted to touch on while we are discussing this is, you alluded towards vertical growth of structures as a show of power. But if we dilute that a little bit and broaden it, we started dwelling in vertical structures and all of that. Tell us a little bit about that from a lens of convenience, from a lens of need, resource use, sustainability. How and why do you think we started moving to vertical structures?
Absolutely. And I think both the convenience and sustainability came in when we wanted to go vertical. Because you started with the point that we found a way that we can have more number of people, we can have villages and towns, but then we also realized that either we can increase our footprint by going horizontally, or if I got that space, I can go vertically. Now, vertically was a bit tricky at that point of time because we got limited choice of material. With stone and brick, we thought, okay, we can go up to a certain level. We can't have Burj Khalifa during those days because we never had that kind of modern materials. But when we started going horizontal, a need of connectivity started. That how far can I go? I will go to road in a moment, But if I go horizontal, there is also certain limitation. And if you look, many of the cities or towns historically were around some kind of water resource or agricultural resource or natural resource. So there's also a limitation that you can't go far away from that pond or a river bank or maybe that coastal area. And therefore, there was a bit of requirement that can we build vertical? Now, in building vertical, it was convenient, but it was not sustainable. Why I say so sustainability? Because we felt that it may not be very durable. A big earthquake or another typhoon or a big wind, it can overtopple it. And in order to have it, we were looking for some very strong materials, some clever way of building it, and that evolved. So we wanted convenience that, well, we all still tend to stay together in a small reachable unit so that the road network, everything is limited. But we were again pulled back because we were not having materials or methods. So if you look in terms of footprint wise, there is an element of sustainability that if you have a shorter area to do so. But in order to convert, it was very, very energy intensive.
Yeah. It's a very nice trade-off that you describe. That ideally you would go vertical and a very short radius of influence, so you are very, very sustainable. But to get material to give you that strength of going very too tall, you were having environmental impact somewhere else with a wider
Absolutely. If, for example, to build that tall thing, now I'm drawing material from very far places and I'm extracting that material, which is eventually leading to lots of waste. We need so much of better logistics and better way to build it. And that's where we feel that, okay, fine, but now we are tipping the balance off. They are no longer environmental friendly. They are far more, expensive. And from social footprint, we are now creating a tension that only, powerful guy or rich guy can afford to go up.
Correct.
Shorter dwelling, stay flat.
Yes. Also alludes to another very interesting human trait, right? Expansionism.
Indeed.
Right? So now on that's a wonderful segue into the other topic that we wanted to talk about from civil engineering roads. Why? Because now we agreed that we are going to expand horizontally and create many town hubs, as you said, urban centers, rural centers, doesn't matter. There are hubs. And then we soon figured out that they needed to be connected. The way to connect them were roads. So let's now talk about roads. I want to hear from you, Kaushal. If you think of how roads evolved, the road network, from the Indus Valley times to the Greek times to Roman times and to modern times, tell us a little bit of, give the audience a little picture of how roads evolved.
I can, why not? And this is so nice, like Indus Valley civilization, when we start. So there are, a few things we take it for granted when we see roads nowadays, but think from the perspective, so many years back. And if you
9,000 years back.
Absolutely. So they realize that there is a need of connectivity from one house to another house, from one town to another town. And those roads had so many unique peculiarity that they have built it in a way that two roads, they meet almost perpendicular. They also thought about a bit of curvature. They were not like complete 90 degree, so they have thought about it and they have evolved. But to certain extent, during those time, it was more of connectivity. Now Roman, and I give lots of credit to Roman roads because they have went to a next level. They felt that, look, roads are not just for connectivity, but they are also for my military and defense. If I want to outreach and if I want to conquer something, I need a path. And I want to have a path which can, take loads of my army and I can go there. So they brought us few unique features. They started building straight roads. In fact, previously we were at the mercy on the curvature and contour of the ground where we can go. But they were chopping off some of the things, they were building it, they started. Another nice feature that they build road for long-term use. It was not like a pothole is okay, we'll patch it up. They were not having that kind of thinking, convenient thinking, but they wanted to build for long term. And some of the roads I was told that even are in use today. So they had some minute feature, like they had a kind of a side slope and that allows the excess rainwater to go to the side ditches. They also, by the way, brought the side ditches concept. They also made a gradient, a kind of a typical slope, through which your chariots or something which can ride. So those kind of thinking came in. Eventually, the modern cities, and we also started that for connectivity we needed. And then the concept of spiral road and a radial road and perpendicular like grid kind of pattern came up. Lots of things also happened on the materials that we used. Initially, they were all like mud and stone that we had it, but we wanted to build durable. So in fact, Romans were also started using, concrete sort of stuff
Yes.
to build it.
In fact, I've heard that Roman roads had multi-strata, multi-layers, right? Say
You
something
are
about that.
absolutely right. So there is also one of the gifts that we had it. So they started like whatever I have, and now I'm using some jargon. So we have got a kind of a subgrade, which is the ground itself. I need to compact. I need to make it tighter, make it pack hard. And they had like, ships, they were rolling and ship foots and they were compacting. Then they brought some stones and they crushed it and then they laid it. And then they had, their own blend of concrete at that point of time. So they started building layers of subgrade and base and the topping on it. And that is still in our modern time, we are using it.
Yes.
We have just changed the material.
Yes.
The concept is still the same, compacting it, making it stronger so that it can take the future loads of the vehicle.
Exactly. And the fact that they used flattened stones on top at least saved that civilization from having potholes. My car hits the ditches in the city I live every morning, which doesn't make me feel very happy, by the way.
Right.
No, this is excellent. Staying with roads, I often wonder, why did we need roads, right? And the way I think about it, I'll test my thought with you, is in a very sustainable and durable way, people started using waterways, either seas or rivers.
Absolutely.
But then as population increased and as the settlements expanded horizontally, there was a need to bring in the hinterland of the ports also connected to ports. So I think trade was one big reason for roads to be built. And the other big reason, as you rightly highlighted, the Romans especially, was military.
Absolutely.
And maybe that is why their roads were all straight, because you needed quick access between military bases.
Indeed.
And that's why the Roman Empire was what it was. We all know it.
Indeed.
Right. So this is just fantastic how roads evolved. I want to hear if you have any hypotheses. I'll give you a couple of data points, and then let's see you have any hypotheses or not as a civil engineer. Indus Valley civilization is the oldest amongst, if I say Indus Valley versus Greek civilization versus Roman. Indus Valley civilization had the widest roads because the roads widths varied from something like, if I remember it right, 4 meters to 10 meters. As you rightly said, they were intersecting at right angles, made of mud bricks, right? Burnt bricks. Then came the Greeks. Greeks had very narrow roads, 2.5 meters, 3 meters. And they followed the contours of the hills, right? Which is why it's very funny. On Greek roads, you would see that they had ruts for chariots. And they also had the first version of speed bumps. Right? So that while negotiating that slope, the cars wouldn't roll back.
Indeed. And horses are not pulled back.
Which would be very difficult for these horses.
So human, right?
So human, right? And then the Romans came. And they went back to 4.5 meter, 5 meter width, right? Multi-layered. Which is possibly the first signs of modern roads. Nothing much has changed other than the material. And they were very straight, which means they would not negotiate the slopes anymore. Which led to another massive discovery in your civil engineering, which we'll talk soon, bridges or tunnels.
Indeed.
Right? Tell me a little bit, how do you think that these needs evolved over time? From an accessibility, hub and spoke model maybe. So tell us a little bit about that.
In fact, hub and spoke model was also there. We might be like, rebranding that old wine, into a new bottle, but it is almost same that, trade and defense, they were driving this connectivity need. We were like initially established when we had limited so near some water body, and I think the navigation was known by then that we can transport material, goods and trade using that one. But when we expanded, we wanted this road connectivity and network. But, if I just go back to the width that you used, the width of road, there are lots of aspects that how much trade are we doing? How much transport are we using? If I may use the modern day analogy, is it one way, single lane? Or if I want both way, I've got too much of traffic going both way here and there.
Yes.
So I think somewhere the Indus Valley, they had thought about Because if I look into their settlement, I believe they had a good economic powerhouse. They were investing a lot on the trade. And in order to have it, they thought like connectivity is necessary. And hence they have got like, wider road to allow two-way traffic. And I am not expert on the transports that they were using, whether it were bullock carts or horse carts or whatever. But they realized that, look, I need a wider thing to manage my traffic.
Yes.
Right? Other way, like, Greeks, they might have thought about, but there was like mostly like one directional transport that, okay, I'm from here and I'm going there. And if someone comes in between, well, we'll just give away and segue. And depends on my population and the density of the traffic use that came in. And I again want to repeat your words that, we see the speed bump. They were also there in that point of time. The applications were a bit different, but then that all started. So we had port and accessibility to navigate using water channels. But then not everywhere we have got the water river going.
Yes.
But we all have some town center or economical resource to mine something out or do some agriculture or store something or go and conquer something, military center. We wanted roads which are far away from the water navigation channels.
It's fantastic. I want to tell you something on a lighter note, but this is true. I mean, and maybe this is for the benefit of audience as well. If you really think very deeply, some of the modern civil engineering regulations and standards are a carryover of how big a horse's back was during the Roman times. Because you would have two horses and you would have to accommodate two of those backs, which determined the axle size of your chariots.
Absolutely.
Which eventually got carried over to the axles of first automobiles.
Indeed.
Because of the ruts.
Indeed.
Then came trains, but the train axles had to be carried by trucks.
Correct.
So the axle of trains also got determined by that, which essentially means you can say some of those specifications and engineering dimensions are actually a indicator of how big a horse's back was.
Indeed.
In good old days.
Indeed.
It's just funny how
we are carrying that, that legacy.
Yes.
So nobody stops us to have a wider road and a very wide vehicle.
No, it doesn't.
But somewhere we had a kind of a bit of sense check, and I think we took kind of our tradition and okay, fine, we'll stick with something. A car that can fit in few members, or if you want, then we'll stretch the length rather than the width.
Correct.
Like we'll have longer buses, but not very wider vehicles.
Yes. It's essentially a different way of remembering the size of a horse's back.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
The hind of a horse. This takes us to another very interesting civil engineering construction, right? And let me pose that question to you. Let's think of the Romans. The Roman roads were straight. Because of military requirements, accessibility, fast movement. And they didn't want to go up and down or negotiate terrains, so they came up with the concept of bridges and tunnels. First evolution of the concept of bridges. I do want to hear bridges about bridges from you, but let me complete the question by telling you that military requirement, what created bridges, got carried over into civil purposes.
Indeed.
And one of the many things that happened is earlier for rivers, the two banks never met.
Correct.
And now if you take that bridge and put it on a river, you can use it for civil purposes as well.
Exactly.
With that as bookends, can you tell us your thoughts and hypothesis of what happened to bridges? How did bridges evolve? What do we use it for? What are some of the fun trivia about bridges?
Absolutely. So, bridges are nothing where, a human cannot jump over and there is a big thing that I need to cover. So there's a ditch or a river or a kind of a terrain which is very difficult, like a gorge or something between the two mountains, which they had it. So the bridge started, and we realized that to bridge that gap, I'll need something. So we started as basic as a wood or a tree trunk, and then we had it to cross it. But it comes with the limitations. If I may bring the sustainability or longevity, those tree trunks may not survive for very long. It will get weathered down. Then we thought, okay, why can't we then build something from timber, which is slightly better version, and make a nice joints. And then the concept evolved. If I may just use a bridge, it's like how long I can start building.
I mean the span of the bridge.
Span of the bridge. So if I got a small ditch, yes, I can do it. but I've got slightly wider river. Can I do it? What can we do? So before the bridges, as you mentioned, the two banks never met, other than some navigation, like, through boats and that kind of thing, we do it. So the cultural exchange, the military and the trade had some limitations. But ever since the bridge came, now both sides can go here and there. You can exchange the resources, you can exchange the ideas and thought. So started like a wooden log, then we had some timber and joints, but somewhere our obsession for rock also came in, rock and bricks. So if I may just use a kind of a very easy metaphor, that when we wanted to cross across, let's say I have got like this joint to this joint, I want to go. As soon as I go, there is a bit of deflection and tension, and everything happens. And if I may use just my hand as an analogy, I'm putting it. Now the bottom side is getting pulled, stretched, what we call in engineering tension. I can see the wrinkle on my hand. So the upper side is getting compression. And the smart engineers during those times, they figure out like, now look, I need something which can have both tension and compression. So fine, wood can take some to a certain extent, but we were not having this kind of modern steel which can cope up. So then they came with this classical idea that can I do something, because to have a material that can take tension is very difficult. In nature, you don't allow too much of pulling.
Correct.
But too much of compression is okay. Rock and stones, we know.
They're very good in compression.
Very good in compression. You can push it. And then the concept of arch started. So can I have a kind of a bridge, and then I'll put something in arch, and by the nature and the geometry, everything remains in compression. Now that arch...
Oh, is that why there are arches? I always wondered, why did arches come in? It's because stones and rocks are good in compression.
Indeed.
And arch by design is in compression.
In compression. So majority, not all, majority of the forces are in compression. And stones, and with bit of a mortar or cement to joint it, can take it up.
I see.
And that allowed us that now I can go much wider. So instead of having a kind of a length of a wood, maybe like a few meter or a few feet, I can go even wider. And wood had got that limitation that I cannot have very heavy thing. I also cannot have very wide thing. Like if I want my horse chariot to run on it at very high speed.
Correct.
And that's why the arch bridge started. There's also evolution of arches, Greeks started with very simple like semicircular arch, and then they started like Gothic style where there was a pointed arch. The next generation, I think, is like the horseshoe arch, and it found its application not just in the bridges but in the architectural wonders like some of the mosques, as well as in the churches and chapel, even sometimes in the temple. So that kind of arch. But even over the period of time, if it started flattening it, there was also parabolic arch, because our mathematician found that that's almost the way the stresses are getting distributed. So parabolic arch also came in. And in the modern time, we have got material lucky enough which can take the tensions and compressions very nice. Because of the reinforced concrete and steel, you got almost flatter and flatter. So the bridges, initially they started with a shorter span, but then we wanted to conquer wider and longer. And that's why we have got like the stone and that kind of bridges. Then we understood that we can bring some steel into it. It made it even longer. I'll just in a moment give a credit to modern engineering, the suspension bridges like Golden Gate or something, even much longer, like more than several kilometer, like 1.2 kilometer kind of span. And then cable stayed bridge and cantilever bridge. As long as modern time 2 kilometer completely up in the air. So the materials evolved, our desire to go longer distance evolved, and span evolved, and hence the modern bridges came in.
But I think the trigger, as you rightly said, goes back to expansionism.
Indeed.
Because if we did not feel the need for going longer in span or going wider in span, we would not have invented concrete, we would not have invented steel.
Indeed.
Which means our environmental footprint would have been lower.
Absolutely.
In a way, you could almost ask that what have we achieved by going faster? We are just creating a older and a sicker world faster.
Yes.
That's all we are doing. So that's possibly where the human mind is now debating between sustainability and convenience, right?
Exactly.
This is fantastic conversation. Before I swing to the drainage and concept of civil engineering in drainage, I do want to ask you one very relevant piece here. We never spoke about asphalt or elastomers or recycled polymers for modern roads. And it takes so long, Kaushal, to build some of these roads, right? They built Colosseum in 8 years. We'll talk about Colosseum at some point. But sometimes some of the roads in cities where you and I live, it takes 15 years to build metro train connections.
Yeah.
Or 6 years to build a small patch of road.
Right.
So tell us, where did this whole civic planning change?
Right.
Given that we also have different materials now, which are faster to lay out.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
It's like a choices spoils our decision making. And to a certain extent, yes, we have got more choices like polymer and asphalt and concrete, and we can also build, nobody stops us to build something from stone. And there are also some roads which are just nothing but a crushed stones we are still having there. But I think there are also a few things which are like priorities, economy, which community I want to give first connection. So going back to the sustainability aspect,
yes,
community, economics, and environmental stuff that also comes in. And also one unfortunate part, like I'm not very cynical here, but some of them are like negligence. We don't want to maintain it. We also don't give attention on the quality which we need. The same asphalt road in some other country can last for decades, but here not even one rain shower. So there is also something that we are missing out. We are not giving that attention or a craftsmanship or a quality, and maybe the mindset that let's fix it something now and then we'll do a better one and nicer one later on. So going back to the sustainability and convenience, many a time in expanding city, they lean more on convenience, easy, fast food, quickly,
yes,
let's make it. We'll think about longevity and smooth ride and, better for society is a second priority.
Let me add a little philosophical thinking to what you just said. Maybe somewhere this is because we thought we were more confident with modern materials.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to maintain it so much.
True.
At the same time, the materials that we have created in modern times are possibly not as robust. A little
True.
change in the recipe,
Yeah.
one rain, it washes it away.
Yeah.
Whereas think of stones, your obsession of rocks.
Exactly.
They stay.
Exactly. They've seen like not just like years, centuries,
Yes.
millennium. So that rock which is out, I think some of the rocks are literally billions of years. It has seen all the nature's fury, hot temperature, rain, whatever you say.
Correct.
Tried and tested.
Yes, it stays.
It stays. But the modern concrete, we wanted to make it build fast. It can harden fast. So the rock making took, ages, and that's why it is surviving for ages. My concrete just got ready in 30 minutes, delivered and hardened in a week. But also you are taking a toll that it doesn't last long. And
Yes.
the bitumen that you also brought in, very easy, very convenient, very soft to install and do it and with the temperature. But then I think it also washes away. But there are also some, learnings we had it that if you want to make it durable now, it is still possible. But is it our priority? Do we want to invest on it? Will our community really need a road which can last for 1,000 years?
Exactly. That's the capitalism coming in now.
Exactly.
Gradually.
Exactly.
Right? You start evaluating everything based on ROACE or money
Correct.
or capital sinking and all of that, right?
Exactly.
So almost sounds like from a lens of sustainability versus convenience, where we started the conversation, it sounds like initially our engineering started with a focus on resource use, efficient use of resources, long-term durability, relying on nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
To a point where we can make things very fast now, very
Indeed.
conveniently, speed is of essence, but it's possibly on the edge, which means it's not that robust.
Indeed.
Yeah, a little off,
Like
in your recipe, the thing can crumble.
Yeah.
Let's touch on another very important aspect of civil engineering: sanitation or conveyance of liquids, right? Drainage system.
Absolutely.
You did touch on the drainage system a little bit when you were talking of Roman roads. Let's start there. And if you don't mind me asking you to focus on the drainage system of Indus Valley civilization and that of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So I'm specifically thinking of sanitation and sewage carrying concepts in the Indus Valley civilization versus the aqueducts in
Absolutely.
Rome. Can you explain this from a civil engineer's eyes?
And the common link here is again like road. I'll start with this. So Romans had kind of a road which has got a camber, which has got a natural slope, and they had a thinking at that point of time that I don't want potholes. I don't want water to accumulate on the road. Let it run out. And where it will go into the ditches. And the ditches also, they gave the natural slope. that it will go and accumulate elsewhere where I can dispose it, so that my road remains in a very durable condition, utilized in all weather, etc. Now, if I go onto the drainage, and there are different type of drainage that we have, and if I touch on the Indus Valley civilization, there are like, two distinct type of drainage we can tend to see. One is like next to the road, which is to accumulate rainwater, or we call storm drain. Lots of water accumulate here, and then we want to dispose of. The another one is the wastewater that we generate in our homes,
right?
Or maybe that type, whatever the practices that we had. So I think that kind of also lead, because that is not, the contamination level of the waste which is generated in our houses. Those drainage needs a very different way to deal with it. It can also carry pathogens. It can also bring disease if you don't deal it very well.
Exactly.
And I'm very, very delighted that, those civilizations was aware of it, how to manage that one, because it is created by us. It is not the clear rainwater which is coming. So that is one way they were managing, but they also had a system. And in fact, Shubhrat, you can elaborate, I think, on the way that they were doing, the soak pits or vertical wells.
Yes.
You want to share something on this, and then I'll come back more on the aqueducts and road. So you have some observation?
It's a very nice continuation to what you are already sharing, right? What they fundamentally did is they managed the slope. They used the gradient to take advantage of gravity so that it flows. But if you go back to the details of how they manage the gradient, they almost optimize the flow rate.
Absolutely.
That it does not erode away your channels.
Yeah.
And there were intermittent points where they had what you would now call as storage pits.
Yeah.
Or dispensation pits, right? Or soak pits, right?
Yeah.
Both they serve as fractional settlement, sedimentation.
Yeah.
As well as, I don't know, it's an hypothesis, but you made a very important point. When liquids flow, they are the easiest way of transporting pathogens.
Indeed.
Maybe the way they dealt with these things also led to trapping pathogens.
Indeed.
Right? Because it did not spread as much.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So if I may take this kind of a drainage, and the relevance of drainage in modern civilization is like, we are not acknowledging, but we, after the Romans, we a little bit forgotten how we manage the drainage network. Until 18th century, if you see, the population of human always had some kind of cholera or a waterborne diseases, because we have forgotten how to manage our wastewater with the fresh water, and when they intermingle, we end up with the disease. And for several generations, we could not do it. Very late in 18th, 19th century, we realized that we need to manage our wastewater very well. We want to get rid of those pathogens which can spread the disease. And I may make a very strong statement that it's not like just the modern medication or vaccines which is helping us to build, but this is like the modern drainage gave a public health department a completely new makeover, which allows such a good number of population to survive in a way which is hygienic. It is getting those pathogens away from our modern livelihood. And drainage, if we would not had it, I don't think that only the pure vaccines and medicines can do it. It's like, eliminating the cause itself rather than making a remedy. So lots of credit to our ancestors who thought about those drainage system. And if time permits, maybe we'll discuss about the slopes and the material choices of the drainage. But if we never had the modern drain, I doubt we could have so many billions of people on planet Earth.
Let me add one more point. It's amazing to think how proficient our ancestors were, predecessors were, because there are some nuances that we don't talk about, but they are so important details. You are carrying water for kilometers and they are not dripping.
Yeah.
They are not leaking.
Yeah.
So not only did they figure out how to use gravity and create these channels, but they also figured out how to waterproof them.
Absolutely.
Which is also a concoction with materials.
Absolutely.
Not forgetting what you said, obsession with rocks.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal how they did it, right? Sometimes it's not even material. Sometimes it's just how they had the locking mechanisms.
Connection.
Right? The
joints. Yeah.
It's just amazing how civil engineering has evolved. And that's why when I talk to my son, we often discuss a little bit about, we call civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, but engineering per se is also a philosophy.
True.
right?
True.
It's exactly the philosophy like the Aristotles and the Socrateses of the world created. It's just
True.
that it is handled in a very different way,
True.
right? And we subsetize those.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So I think engineers, because we are obsessed with objectivity, and hence our philosophy were mostly like for a purpose that, okay, I want water from this point to that point so that I can have convenience. I don't have to carry an heavy water because water is heavy and fetch it out from that well or a river. I can't have a channel to get into it. So philosophically, they wanted to build something which is convenient as well as sustainable. Like, I'm not putting too much of stress on the environment or the economics, but I'm meeting my needs. So that was the original philosophical thought. And once I consume that water, how I am going to throw it away from me so that same thing will not hurt us back.
Yes.
So indeed it was very philosophical evolution.
It is a philosophical evolution. It is. I think it's very deep. It's not only engineering. I think if you think of science, if you think of religion, if you think of engineering, everything is a philosophy at the end of the day. Even politics is philosophy, right?
True.
So everything comes together. We may run out of time today, but before we end the episode, I do want to touch briefly on buildings and structures.
Absolutely.
And we will do it so briefly that we'll promise our audience that we'll come back and have a deeper dive into these in a future one. But at least for today's episode, let's talk a little bit about some well-known structures. I know pyramids are your obsession. You love them. Tell us a little bit about pyramids from a civil engineer's eyes.
So again, when I saw it for the first time, I felt that even in the modern time, if we have to build it, I think it would be a real challenge for engineers, to have that kind of thing. Such a huge, big rocks and accumulating them and building. The geometry, the shape, the way they have like stacked up. I think if we get into details, it's mind-blowing. Eventually, we also learn that the pyramid, they are oriented in certain way. And maybe Shubhradeep, I can just toss back kind of a question to you that like the human resource which was involved in it, do you think that they were slaves or they had some other meaning while they were doing it? Any thoughts?
What I have read is that for a long time, the belief or wisdom was that they were all slaves. But there have been some recent discoveries where even some of their mummified bodies have been identified. And it has led to a new belief that the people who worked on building the pyramids were actually well taken care of.
Absolutely.
Which essentially means they must have employed themselves very voluntarily.
Indeed.
And the stretch of imagination says that those who employed themselves or volunteered themselves to get engaged in building pyramids, of course not volunteering, they were paid for it.
Right.
They were very well taken care of, and maybe because that is their liberation in this life, because they're building it for the pharaoh, who, by the way, was an earthly existence of God himself or herself. So maybe they were not all slaves. There were efficient artisans. Maybe there were very top-notch stone cutters.
Indeed.
Right? And engineers like you and I.
Indeed. Absolutely. And that's also a very nice segue that we started like building just for shelter, just for our protection. But now we are building something which has got their own spiritual meaning to it. They want to build something not just for the shelter or a protection against nature, but for some kind of ritual that they believed in.
Correct.
And hence, as you mentioned, that you cannot keep pushing someone beyond one level that based on the slave that you need to build some gigantic stuff like this.
Yes.
There was some belief. So it was moving away civil engineers from building a shelter just from protection to something that has got a deeper meaning to your lives as well.
It also possibly touches on another point you were trying to say. See, these are those big and massive structures in modern times, contemporary times, if I can make a cheeky comment, big, beautiful structures, right? It's just amazing that unless you are sold on a purpose, you wouldn't do that, point one. And point two, they become bigger and bigger, which means there is an obsession of showing off of power.
Absolutely.
Right? But coming back to a point you made a few minutes back, I have a hypothesis of why they are oriented in a certain way. People say they are oriented in a certain way because of divine interventions and the directions. I have a feeling that unknowingly it is meteorological in nature. Maybe that orientation helped that structure, that big, beautiful structure, to handle storms and winds and sand erosion in good ways. And maybe that is why they have survived centuries.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which takes us to another thinking that such massive structures, imagine the number of earthquakes it has tolerated.
True. True. In fact, in civil engineering, I did not touch here, but any structure that we build, we look into the various forces of nature, wind, earthquake, typhoon. We study a lot on meteorological dimensions. And if I near the coastal regions or an offshore, I also look into oceanographic parameters.
Yes.
It goes into it. What's my direction of wind, from where the sunlight will come the maximum. And pyramid, if you look, that orientation is not just by coincidence. If you look at all of them, there is lots of thinking has gone behind it. Where is the magnetic north, from where the wind is likely to blow, how the sun will orient it, and where are we located on planet Earth. So I don't think that it is just a kind of build it because I have got only land here. Just like my builder mentioned that this is the only place that you can build because there's land available there. They have thought a lot about it.
They were very well thought about. And let's not also forget, I think this is an important information to share, that we are trying to explain pyramid from how we see Egypt and River Nile today. But when pyramids were built, River Nile wasn't like it is today. In the minimum, we know that it was 7 kilometers or 8 kilometers closer to the pyramids. So the wind patterns, the water levels, everything was different.
Absolutely.
Right? So we have to go back to also remember what the geography and the meteorology was when these structures evolved.
True.
It's just fascinating that they survived even such massive changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Egypt was much greener at that point, I am told. Now there are more sands.
Indeed. Deserted. True. And those pyramid, and if I just take the geometry itself, even some of the temples that we look into, the ancient one, we still are having some kind of pyramid, some kind of dome in our temples. So the pyramids also have been built with some sort of rituals or some angle of religion over there. And I've also heard, like in India, we have got lots of temples, like they are also marvel in the way they have been built. I can quote that there are some temples in southern part of India, because of the latitude and longitude that they have, the shape of those domes are such that no matter any time of the year, wherever the sun is, you will not have shadow of that entire dome falling on the ground. All the shadow just remains on it. So I just think that, don't we think that they have so much thought which has gone about the nature, their own observation, sun, orientation on the earth, and we are building it. And there are so many examples. Maybe in interest of time we cannot cover, but there are gems of structures, and I feel like those engineers who build it, they had a much deeper sense and our understanding on how we want to build it.
It's just amazing with so much of limited tools as compared to modern times.
True.
What kind of clinical precision they had.
True.
Right? Clearly they observed nature and understood nature more than what you and I do.
True.
Because that is also another way of concluding that we have moved from sustainability, which is a nature-focused approach, to convenience, which is human-focused approach.
Indeed.
Right? And in the process, we developed economy, we developed currencies, have socialistic approach, capitalistic approach, and whatnot. But there is so much more to discuss, Kaushal, on this. We would discuss the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. We could discuss the Taj Mahal, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Colosseum, and whatnot. For today, let's, I think, pause here with the promise and a teaser to audience that we will come back and continue to talk about these engineering structures and engineering marvels from either a sustainability or a convenience lens, or from a philosophy of engineering lens.
Indeed.
Right? But it was a pleasure having you for this podcast. And I hope as our audience goes through these conversations, they would pick up their own take on what sustainability really means. Why do we need to scramble for sustainability now when it was very inherent in our approach and behavior at one point?
True.
Where did we lose it? And in the process, what did we gain?
Correct.
Right? One big takeaway for me from this podcast that you said is there is possibly in our genes a carryover of the obsession for rock.
True.
A carryover for the obsession of durability.
True.
And we have been wanting to satiate that by trying to come up with different recipes of durability. And in the process, knowingly or unknowingly, we are leaving a few irreversible footprints or imprints on the environment.
Correct. We want to have durable, stronger, bigger, because that's what genetically we think that stronger and bigger will rule.
Yes, and that goes into survival of the fittest, possibly, right?
Correct.
But once again, thank you very much for your time. Pleasure having you, and we will definitely continue this conversation in some future podcasts.
Absolutely. Really loved it.
Thank you.
We'll connect once again. Thank you.